The research on global gender inequality shows that no country has been able to completely close the gender gap for women in the workplace. The United Nations has a gender inequality index. In 2013, the index showed that although gender inequality varies tremendously across countries, the losses in achievement due to gender inequality range from 5 to 75% worldwide. And the 2013 Global Gender Report once again reported that despite the increased participation of women in higher education and the overall workforce, women's presence in economic leadership positions is still quite limited. So despite all the progress made by women in shattering the glass ceiling in recent decades, how have things really changed, or have they? Joining me now is someone who has a definite answer to that question. She's been named, among other things, the most powerful woman in business, one of the world's 100 most powerful women, and was among the first women to run a Fortune 20 company. Fiorina is one of the world's most recognized business and opinion leaders. She's also the founder of the One Woman Initiative and former chairman of Hewlett-Packard. She now serves as chairman of Good 360, the world's largest product philanthropy organization. We want to welcome you to Full Frame. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
You said when you were named the chair at Hewlett-Packard back in 1999, you were kind of surprised that everyone focused on the fact that you were a woman. If you were named today, would it change much? I mean, has the landscape changed at all, or is it still, if you're a woman CEO, people are looking at you differently?
Well, I think things have changed. For the 6 years that I served as chairman and CEO of Hewlett-Packard, my gender was a constant source of discussion and commentary. On the other hand, today's women CEOs, and thankfully there are far more of them, Mary Barra, as an example, there was about 1 day of news coverage about her gender, and then it went on to other things. So there has been progress, and there are more female CEOs, certainly. And yet, only 3% of the Fortune 500 are led by women. So we have a lot of progress left to make.
How much did that get on your nerves?
Well, you know, it's interesting because in many ways, women still are not given the presumption of competence that men are given. And so the burden of proof always rests with a woman to prove that she can do the job. And when I came into Hewlett-Packard, honestly, I really thought that people would be more focused on the trouble that this legendary company was in, and it was in a great deal of trouble. I was hired as a transformational leader. I thought people would focus on the fact that I came from outside the industry, perhaps, or I was the first outsider, or I was the first non-engineer. But people really fixated on my gender, and it was, in retrospect, of course, entirely predictable. I was the first, although I hadn't predicted it because I had so long ago stopped thinking about myself as a woman in business and thought about myself as a business leader who happened to be a woman.
You talked about business leader. Casey Stengel, the old manager of the New York Yankees, said the secret to leadership is to make sure that the part of the team that hates you is kept away from the part of the team that's still undecided. I guess as a leader coming in and having to deal with not just that kind of stuff, the underlying stuff, but also the woman thing, perhaps maybe men looking at you and saying, well, you know, she's telling me what to do. Is there still a lot of that going on in the business industry, or has it changed, do you think?
Well, look, I think it's still undeniably different for women. Women are scrutinized differently, caricatured differently, criticized differently. And yet it's also true that the role of a leader is to lead, despite what people are saying about you. The role of a leader is to make sure that those people in the organization who embrace change help proselytize change among those who are skeptical, and that a leader also has to identify those people who really don't want to change no matter what. That's true for a man, and it's true for a woman.
There's also the other piece of this, which is if you're a CEO, you have to deal with the people beneath you, and as you said, trying to engender change. But you also have to deal with the board, and it doesn't seem like there's these boards are dominated by a lot of women who are really progressive. They seem like they're old school, a lot of good old boys, that kind of thing. I mean, it's tough for a woman to navigate both up and down, right?
Well, look, if you look at this data, what you'll see is in this country, which has made more progress on gender equality in business than any other country on earth, I think it's fair to say. But it's also true that only 16% of corporate officers and board members are women. And that number hasn't budged in a decade. And I think the reason for that is because boardrooms are pretty clubby affairs, and people actually in positions of risk and liability, which a board position is, tend to feel more comfortable with people like themselves. That's human nature. It doesn't make people bad, but it's human nature to feel more comfortable with someone like you, and in particular to feel more comfortable with someone you've known a long time. And so a woman frequently is perceived as riskier. I don't know them. And yet the data says women are frequently less risky. They, for example, I also chair an organization called Opportunity International. We lift women and their families out of poverty through microfinance. It turns out that women are far better credit risks than men, and so most of our clients are women. It turns out there have been a lot of studies made that women tend to be better problem solvers in many cases.
You started out a few years back in this business, you know, in the business world. And probably it was pretty sexist back then. There's sexual harassment. I mean, there was...
Yeah. I started in 1980. My first business meeting with a client was in a strip club, because that's where the client wanted to test me and meet me.
I guess that says it all, doesn't it?
Yeah, my first boss, when I became a manager for the first time, introduced me to my team as a token bimbo. So I hope things have gotten better for women.
We'll talk about that, because that's back then. And people think the arc's pretty good and that we've gotten to where we are today. But still, a woman gets in a leadership position like yours, and then people whisper behind the scenes, oh, she's kind of pushy, or she's stuff that they wouldn't say about a guy, right? I mean, that's still there.
Of course it's still there. A woman is described as pushy, or a word that starts with a B.
Yes.
A man is described as assertive, decisive. But you know, that's not as bad as the global reality. Women are the most subjugated people on the planet. 70% of the people living on less than $2 a day are women. Women are sold into sex slavery. Female lives are aborted by the millions simply because they're female. This is an outrage. And so, yes, it's terrible that women are talked about. And yes, it's a tragedy that only 16% of corporate officers and board members are women. But the bigger tragedy is the amount of human potential that is being wasted, the lives that are being destroyed simply because they're women. And the thing is now, the data is so clear. This is dumb. It's bad business. It's bad policy. If you want to solve problems and improve the state of the world, women need to be engaged. It's in everyone's interest to engage women more. You know, I think we're at the point now where you don't legislate a change in attitude. I think we're at the point now where instead of merely talking about this as a matter of justice or equity or inclusion or diversity, although it is all those things, we need to now speak about it in terms of enlightened self-interest. It is in every organization's self-interest to tap all of the potential they have. It is in every nation's interest to tap 50% of their human potential. Women represent half the world, half the nation. Goodness me, we have a lot of problems and a lot of opportunities, and we are wasting the potential of women to help solve them.
But one of the other things that I think women bring to the table is perhaps, you know, a sensitivity, an ability to listen, perhaps, to understand another person's point of view. Men tend to come in and they bluster and that sort of thing. And I think in the political realm, I know a guy who used to work for one of the female senators, and he said that she always would get in and she could somehow bring the different sides together. So they do bring different skill sets than men have in many regards.
Well, I think, look, I think command and control, while it is a traditional style of leadership, is not very effective anymore, if it ever was. And it's not effective because our problems are very complex, the pace of change is accelerating, and nobody is smart enough to have all the answers. Women tend to go first to collaboration. not competition. And in a complex, fast-paced environment, collaboration is actually extremely useful skill because it brings lots of perspectives and points of view to the table. I think a good leader, male or female, a good leader is empathetic as well as demanding. And I think sometimes women bring that empathy and that ability to listen a little bit more naturally.
In a global sense, where do you think America stands in terms of opportunities for women?
Well, I think we have come a very long way from where we were even 20 years ago. I believe this is a nation where more people from more places in more circumstances have been able to fulfill their potential, and I believe that is true for women as well. So I think this is, honestly, the greatest country on the face of the earth because so many people are enabled to fulfill their potential. I started out as a secretary. I was a law school dropout. I guarantee you, it is only in the United States of America, still to this day, that a secretary could become a chief executive of the largest technology company in the world. And so while we have a very long way to go, we also, I think, have demonstrated how much economic growth women's participation in the economy can create. So I'm proud of the example we set in the world, and I acknowledge that we also have a ways to go.
You started as that secretary, and I know from reading about you that there was somebody in the office that took an interest in you.
Yes,
and
two men.
Yeah.
Two men.
How much did that mentoring help in your trajectory?
Huge. In fact, I tell this story often. Those two gentlemen, when they came to my desk and said, "We've been watching you. We think you can do more than type and file," they changed my life. Fundamentally, they put me on a path towards business, which I had never even considered. But more than that, that was my first demonstration of real leadership. They saw potential in me, and because they did, I saw possibilities in myself. And so I learned that leadership isn't about who has position or title or the corner office. Leadership is about seeing potential in other people and helping people unlock potential, because if you can find potential in other people, you can see possibilities in whatever the problem or the circumstances that you're in.
Okay, so we have this book here, and it's called Tough Choices, and there just happens to be this other woman out with another book that also has choices in it. You may have heard of her. Her name's Hillary Clinton. She stole that undoubtedly from you. You ought to talk to her about that.
Well, this was published in 2006, so it was a long time ago.
You're way ahead of her. But she must like something about you because she chose choices in her title. There's been a lot of speculation that she may run for president of the United States. Do you think America's ready for a woman president, or long overdue for a woman's president, perhaps?
I think Americans are clearly ready for a woman president. Now, whether that will be Hillary Clinton or not, who knows? But the polling suggests that not only are Americans ready for a woman president, but they're excited about a woman president. So, yes, I think America's ready.
Do you think they'll stop talking about her hair and her pantsuits and all of that?
Probably not. No, probably not.
They haven't gone that far.
But, you know, one of the things I've learned in the course of my life is people say all kinds of things about you. And you can let what they say about you define you, or you can let your own choices, your own decisions, your own results, and your own beliefs define you. And I think allowing your own choices and beliefs to define you is far better than other people's words.
You mentioned your own choices. So how about your own choices? Where do you see yourself as we move forward in life? I know you're very active right now in philanthropy, but you also dipped your toe in the water politically. What fascinates you? What interests you? Where do you see yourself
Well, you know,
going?
I think I will remain very actively engaged in both politics and policy. And the reason for that is because A, it matters and it's important. Remember, I like tough challenges. But B, in this country, ours was intended to be a citizen government. That's how we were founded. It's how our government has been designed. And I frankly think that our political process has, in part, become so dysfunctional because we have professional politicians, people who've done nothing but run for office. And the truth is, you learn a lot in the private sector or in the not-for-profit sector that can be brought to politics. And we used to be a nation where people would move routinely in and out of public service. I think we should return to that, actually.
I want to ask you one final question. If there's a young girl out there watching you and saying, you know, maybe I'd like to follow in her footsteps, you know, maybe I want to be a CEO, maybe I want to go into politics, maybe I want to be president, what advice would you give her, and what tips might you give her in terms of navigating this type of terrain that you had to navigate?
Well, I would say first, there is no substitute for hard work, and don't be afraid of the tough challenges. In fact, it's the tough challenges and the tough times that teach you what you're really made of. Secondly, I would say, don't wait for the perfect job. Just get a job, because you'll learn something important in every experience you have if you let yourself learn it. And the truth is, if you do a job really well, whatever that job is, opportunity will knock. And when opportunity knocks, answer the door. And the third thing I would say is, everyone has gifts. Find out what yours are. Find out what you love to do and what you're good at doing. And then put all of your energy into it and define your life for yourself. Don't let someone else define it for you.
Just get going, huh?
Well, among other things.
Yeah. All right. Thanks so much. It was great talking to you.
Great to talk to you.